In this episode, we're setting up not one, but 5 992 GT3RSs. We're out in Dubai this week with our Middle East partners Mission Motorsport, and we're preparing a lot of cars, getting them all set up in time for the UAE Time Attack Series this coming weekend. We're going to be working on a wide range of models whilst we're here, varying from the GR Yaris's through to the Ferraris and the Porsches, but today we're having a 992 GT3RS day. We're going to get through all the 992 GT3RSs that we've got booked in, so we're going to talk through how we go about setting these cars up for track. So before we get started, I just want to introduce Arnie from Mission Motorsport, our partners out here in the Gulf. I just wanted to get you to introduce yourself a little bit and tell everyone a bit about what else you do.
Hey guys, I'm Arnie from Mission Motorsport, and we do suspension. Not as good as them, but we are getting there.
And we're out here as well, doing some product knowledge and some training with your guys as well, just to get trained on the string and line kit. So we've been going through that on every car as well, getting these setups absolutely perfect in time for the UAE Time Attack Series. Is it just suspension you do, or more services?
So we do brakes, suspension, exhaust systems. We do tuning for some platforms, not all, and we are actually getting more into the suspension secret products, which is actually helping us get our customers' cars going faster.
So out here, what's the scene like? Do people like to modify the cars out here, like the supercars, or do they tend to keep them completely standard? What's the...
Depending on cars and brands, usually a lot of people like to do exhaust systems over here because of the new EU emission regulations. The cars are really muted, so everyone just wants to hear their cars. So the most standard practice, what we do have is we install a lot of exhaust systems on cars over here.
So these cars, like as we know, because we're working on them right now, they're not just kept in a garage, they are used quite well. So what sort of things are out here on the motorsport front? Like, what can these compete in?
Motorsport over here since 2020 has increased in a very drastic pace. In this Time Attack event, we're having about 49 cars that entered. And those are cars from all over the Middle East. Not only that, in the Middle East right now, we have a lot of championships which are running in Saudi, for example, which are hill climb events. So this weekend, we have a lot of cars here for setups. I think there are about 15 cars, the UAE Time Attack, and we're hoping to win some trophies for this event.
Yeah, so we've not got a lot of time, so let's get cracking.
Let's get back to work.
So we're going to be setting 5 of these GT3RSs up today, and they're all going to have slightly different setups because some are being raced in the UAE Time Attack Series, others are being used for track days, and some others for hill climbs and some street use as well. And there's also some slightly different tyres. However, despite them having different uses, every single one has got the same issue running through as a common trait, and that is the mid-corner understeer. So we're going to be focusing heavily on removing that from all the chassis and getting a nice, neutral, balanced chassis that we know we can achieve. So one of the major reasons for the understeer in the 992 3RS chassis is shown very well by this tyre. So this tyre has come off a 992 3RS that's been around track, and this was running the maximum camber achievable with a standard suspension system. And that's up to about 2.8 degrees, depending on ride height, between 2.6, 2.8 degrees. And the outside edge of the tyre is completely stripped down, almost bare. If you look at the inside edge of the tyre, you'll see there's still lots of tread left, lots of potential life in the tyre, but the outside is now done. It's completely dead. And this, again, is due to a lack of camber, and we can show this quite easily. So what this means is, if we're not running enough static negative camber, as we're going through the corner, we're actually going to start rolling onto the outside edge. As we're going around a left-hander in this case, we're going to be rolling onto the outside edge of the front right and wearing away the outside edge this time. That means we're only on a portion of the contact patch that's available. This means that we've only got a little bit of tyre in contact with the ground, which means we haven't got the maximum grip available to us that the whole tyre could offer through that corner. This scrubs off due to being overloaded and causes the understeer. And that's why it wears so fast, because it's being physically scrubbed across the ground as it's overwhelmed, and that reduces the grip and causes the front just to push and give the understeer. So if we can tune the camber to such a position statically that when we go through the corner, we're leaning onto the tyre, using the full width of that section, getting maximum grip from the tyre, reducing understeer. We're going to reduce the understeer because we're using all of that tyre, which means it's no longer going to get overwhelmed at the same speeds as it was before. This means we can carry more speed through the corner onto that contact patch and utilise it to reduce understeer as much as possible to help get that car around the corner. So we've got the front wheel off so we can have a closer look at how we're going to solve this issue, and it is with one of our camber blocks. So in the top of the hub here, we have OEM camber adjustment, which is the eccentric bolt that can be rotated to increase or decrease camber as standard. However, we machine a block which replaces the OEM one, which changes the range of adjustment. So as standard, you can get a maximum of negative 2.8 degrees if you've got minimum ride height. But with our block, you can get up to negative 4 degrees. So it moves that window up so you can achieve much higher levels of camber to run much grippier tyres, and you can stop the understeer from happening, and you can also save your tyres out on track. With this being such a common issue, every single one of the 3RSs that we're working on today has our camber blocks fitted on the front axle. This is so we have the adjustment range completely unlocked. Mission Motorsport have actually installed these prior to us arriving here so that we can get straight cracking on with these cars and have no limitations when we come to setting these up. So with the camber no longer being a problem, we now can move our attention onto another aspect of geometry that can reduce understeer, and that is rake angle. So rake angle is a really critical piece, especially on the Porsches with high aero, because it has a secondary impact as well. But it has a mechanical impact first and foremost, which is increasing the rake angle gives more positivity on the nose, more front end bite. That means that as we're going into the corner, we get a more positive nose, a more positive front end on turning, which sets the car up nicely to approach the apex with a chassis that's already prone to start rotating to help reduce the understeer. The secondary effect of rake angle is aerodynamics, which is even more important on a car like this with a lot of aerodynamics working on the car, underbody and the big rear wing as well. And the reason it is so effective is because rake angle is effectively where we are setting the rear of the car higher than the front. This generates an underbody that is higher at the rear and lower at the front, so we have a sloping floor going downhill towards the nose. This generates something called a venturi duct, and this is where when the air comes under the nose, it rapidly expands to follow the shape of the void towards the back of the car as it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and this generates low pressure, which means that we're drawing the air through the car even faster, which generates the downforce. So we then have a low pressure underbody with a higher pressure on top of the body that generates downforce and pulls the car towards the floor by making the bottom of the car active by generating that venturi. So increasing rake angle can increase downforce by making the floor work harder for the car. There is a limit to that though. So Porsche Motorsport do publish graphs on underbody aero as well with their specialist motorsport client cars like the GT3RS Club Sport. And that shows exactly the optimum settings of rake angle to generate the maximum amount of downforce for the least amount of drag. So there is a fine-tuned playoff to get the perfect amount of rake angle. So we're going to be altering the rake angle on this 3RS to not only optimize the mechanical turn-in and the behavior of the car into the apex, but also to increase that downforce by utilizing the underbody on this car. So in order to set the rake angle, we need to lower the front more than the rear. We're going to be lowering the whole car today, but we're going to be lowering the front more than we lower the rear to get the exact amount of rake that we are looking for in this chassis to get the underbody working at its most optimum. Another key component to targeting mid-corner understeer is anti-roll bar settings, and the GT Porsches, including the 3RS, come with adjustable anti-roll bars front and rear. The rear with two-way adjustable, the front with three-way adjustable. That means there's 2 holes in the back and 3 holes in the front, where we can choose to bolt the drop link to change the stiffness of the anti-roll bar. If we bolt the drop link closer to the body of the anti-roll bar, it's stiffer. If we bolt it as far away as possible, it's softer. When we're at the apex of a corner, having a mid-corner oversteer or understeer scenario, the roll bars are extremely effective at that point. This is because the dampers no longer are effective as the car has done its transient state, it's moved over onto the outside dampers, the inside's lifted, and it's sat in a transient position at the apex. This means that the most effective point of control is your spring rate and your anti-roll bar rate, which work in conjunction to generate your corner stiffness effectively. This is already set to its maximum stiffness at the rear, because one of the first ports of call we could do is we could soften the front bar or stiffen the rear bar. So this is already at full stiff. So we know by looking at the tyres that camber is a key component now to having that understeer issue, but with this rear roll bar set to full stiff already, we're not going to adjust this. We're going to leave it exactly where it is because that's exactly where we want it to help with the front understeer anyway. So I've just finished aligning the car now with all those changes made. You need to get the car strung up at the end to get your toe settings back onto the car because everything we've just adjusted knocks out the toe quite a lot. So we've addressed the mid-corner understeer now with the settings we've put on the car, but you do still have the ability to fine-tune the corner entry and corner exit behavior of the car in terms of understeer and oversteer as well. Because on the new 992 GT3RSs, the front and rear dampers are electronically adjustable via the steering wheel in terms of compression and rebound settings. So this is very rare, especially on a road car, to have that adjustability within the chassis itself, on electronic suspension especially. So it's a really cool feature. So if you're heading to track, a really nice thing to do is literally keep everything set as it comes, and then when you're at track, you can work from that median point as a baseline to tune the car for your driving style, the tyres you're on, how the car is feeling, and also for the weather on that day. This is something we're going to be looking into very soon, because this car, now it's all set up, is actually going over to the racetrack in 2 days' time for the UAE Time Attack Series. So whilst we're at track with this car, we're also going to be going into more detail on those settings, because we will be tuning that with the driver on the day to improve the dynamics of the chassis around that circuit. So what you don't want to do when you go to track in this car is just wind everything to full stiff, because that will have an adverse effect on the handling, and it will also mean that you lose the ability to tune the chassis based on how it's feeling. So leave it in that middle point, and then go onto the track day and then tune the car from that position, because you might want to go either way yet, depending what the car is doing. So this is the 5th and final GT3RS fully set up today. So this has been the main feature of the video, with it being the last one, because we've just been working flat out getting the other cars ready in today, because we've got a lot of cars left to set up as well tomorrow, in time for the Time Attack Series in 2 days' time. So we'll next see this car at circuit at the Dubai Autodrome, where we're going to be competing in the UAE Time Attack Series with this car and many others that we've been setting up today, yesterday and tomorrow. So we're going to see how they all get on, and we're going to go into a little bit more detail on how to fine-tune this car at track using the onboard damper and diff adjustment.